you, like me, grew up lonely?
May I stand unshaken amidst the crash of world.
That was a poor attempt at a joke to start this video, but what I mean by that is, I grew up an only child. So I didn't have any brothers or sisters, obviously that's what only child means. But video games were still a big part of my life. I still loved playing them. But because I didn't have anyone to play with in my house, and obviously when I started playing I was too young to play online, and I didn't have any games that went online, I got really into games that like had a good story to them, had a good single player mode, and I never really got out of that. To this day I don't play many multiplayer games or online games. The closest thing I got to it is Overwatch. I got pretty into that for like a year. But other than that, I've been really focused mainly on story-based games and campaign-based games. So, the first one that started that, I believe, if Lego Star Wars counts, then that, but that already had a story, it didn't like make its own. After that, let's see, what did I get into? Skylanders. Even though looking back, the story wasn't that great, as a 11-year-old that got little toys to come with the game, I loved the story, I thought it was great. And I just loved, like, since Skylanders especially, like, you get to switch out the characters to which character you are, so you really got more invested in, like, being those characters and acting like you were those characters in the game. Then after that, I got a little older, and then the next story games I played was Assassin's Creed Black Flag, which had a great story, and an absolute great game overall. I might make a video on that in the future, but what I'm going to talk about today is by far the best story in a video game of all time, in my opinion, and my favorite video game ever. And it's not even close. Red Dead Redemption 2 is my favorite video game of all time. Red Dead Redemption is pretty much the exact opposite of the stupid thing I talked about in my last review video. I'm not going to mention it by name, but the story is so invigorating and so encapsulating, and it captures your attention almost immediately. The characters are some of the best characters in not just video games, but any kind of fiction at all. Arthur Morgan is one of the best protagonists in anything I've ever experienced. And the story itself is just so insanely in-depth and insanely, like, the way it changes is, it's hard to describe how good it is. It really is. And the real beauty of this game, obviously, like, the graphics are great. The world itself, like, the map is massive and so detailed, and Rockstar does that in pretty much every game they do, but this is, like, a whole nother level. You can interact with almost everything on the map, and there's so much. Like, I was just riding my horse around in the game yesterday thinking they had to make this trail. They had to code in every single tree and rock and everything I see right now, and the map is massive. It's absolutely insane how much work they put into just the map alone, and the story is still as great as it is. Now, if you haven't played the game, it's been out for 2.5 years. So the story begins, and the story follows a gang of outlaws and robbers in the Wild West in, I believe, 1899 or something around there. And it begins with you trudging through the snow, and the gang is on the run from what you as the player are told is a failed boat robbery. Apparently they tried to rob a boat, and the detectives and the police and everything got on them way quicker than they thought they would. And there's a slight suspicion that someone ratted them out, but they don't really focus on that in the way later in the game. But that's how it starts. And something I found really interesting is the character you play as, Arthur Morgan, wasn't a part of the main boat robbery that failed. So not only do you, the player, not exactly know what happened, but the character you're playing as doesn't know what happened either, because he wasn't... Kaya! Sorry, but the character you're playing as doesn't know what happened either, because he wasn't there. He was doing something else. And you learn a little bit here and there with the opening missions, basically the tutorial up in the snowy mountains. You learn a little bit with those characters that you're doing missions with about what happened, but nothing's really clear. All you know is that Dutch, the leader of the gang, killed a girl in a bad way, and they really could have used Arthur there. And you find out throughout the game that Arthur's pretty much the best shot in the gang. Obviously, because you're the player, he's going to be a little bit OP compared to other people in the world, because you don't want to die every time you get shot once. But it's pretty established that Arthur is the best shot in the gang. So someone saying we really could have used you there, that's kind of a hint like, oh, shit went bad then. And the story from there is them on the run from the law, on the run from people they've robbed from before, on the run from a rival gang called the O'Driscolls. And the story, the way it progresses in itself is so, it's just groundbreaking and mind-blowing the way you watch these characters grow and progress, and then you watch pretty much the whole world fall apart around them. Now, I'm going to jump pretty much right to the end so I can encapsulate what makes this story so great. So if you haven't played the game, spoiler alert, I guess. It's been out for a long time. Even if you haven't played, you probably know what happens, at least vaguely. But spoiler alert nonetheless. If you don't care, keep watching. Or keep watching anyway, I need views. But, so at the end of the game, towards the end of the game, Dutch starts mentally falling apart. He starts killing innocent people, which no one in the gang ever did before. He starts killing innocent people, robbing innocent people. He starts fucking with the army. He starts egging on this Indian prince, like a Native American prince, to attack the army with him. When the chief of that tribe is telling him, no, we need to solve this with peace, Dutch is egging him on to go to war with the U.S. Army. And throughout the whole story, you see Dutch get more detached from reality. He starts repeating himself over and over. Every mission you see, all he says towards the end of the game is, we need faith, we need money, I know what we have to do, I have a plan. We just need faith and money. But the more he says that, the more failed jobs you get into as a gang. You try to rob a bank, it goes terribly wrong. The co-gang leader, Hosea, gets shot in the street, and the youngest member of the gang, named Lenny, gets shot on a roof. And you end up having to escape on a boat that leaves you on an island called Guarma for months, I believe, or maybe a couple weeks, but a month at least. So that's just one thing that went wrong. Before that, you try to rob a trolley in this big town that's based off New Orleans called Saint-Denis. You try to rob a trolley, the law's there, the trolley goes up literally off the rails. The operation literally goes off the rails. You crash into a wall, Dutch almost dies, and you and Lenny have to carry him on a wagon out of the city. You try to fuck with these two families earlier in the game, and one of them steals a kid from there's a character named John Marston. He has a son named Jack. He's probably like 6 in this game. They kidnap Jack after you fuck with one of the families. There's this town that you go into that's probably based off of the Hatfields and McCoys with these two other families, and you try to play both sides. You try to play both families and try and get money from both. One of them catches on at first and kills a member of the gang named Sean. Another one catches on, the other family catches on after that and kidnaps a child, which leads you on murdering an entire mansion full of inbred hillbillies. And Jack's not even there. You burn down the oldest mansion in the game. It's pretty established up to that point that the Braithwaite Manor, I think it's called, or the place where the Braithwaite family lives, it's the oldest estate in the game. Or at least that's what they tell you. Or at least that's what they hint at. And you go in there with the gang, shoot everyone inside, and burn it down. Which is probably one of the most epic scenes in the game. Like, all of you, like, there's like 8 of you at one point walking up to the house. Then that fight's insanely fun, and then just walking away as it's on fire, and like the grandmother of the Braithwaites, the last one alive now, is crawling towards the flames, trying to do anything to save her legacy. But everything just keeps going wrong and wrong for the gang. And Arthur, your character, gets sick. He was one of Dutch's most loyal sons, pretty much. Him and John Marston were. And even they start losing trust in him because of the batshit crazy stuff he does and the crazy things that he tries to make you do. And when Hosea dies, Dutch was always the crazier one in the gang, but he had a lot of sanity before about halfway. And when Hosea was the calm-minded, balanced one, and when he got shot, all reason just went out the window. Hosea was the only one that Dutch listened to. So now that the source of balance is gone, Dutch just wreaks havoc over the West. He keeps saying, you need to cause a distraction. They blow up a massive train bridge. You attack the army for little to no reason. You rob places that you didn't need to, that have so much less money in them than you hoped. And as it gets worse and worse, Dutch goes crazy trying to think of more ways to get money and leave. Because that's what he keeps saying the ultimate goal is to get enough money to leave and just go somewhere quiet and restart their lives. And there's this other character named Micah, who you're told in the beginning of the game just started riding with the gang about a month before the game started. And you end up breaking... Shut up! You end up breaking Micah out of jail, and then Micah shoots up a whole town. Sorry, the hat's gotta come off. I don't think I'm gonna be putting this video up today. I don't think I'm gonna finish it. It'll probably be up tomorrow. Today is the 10th, so it'll probably be up on the 11th. So where was I? I was talking about Micah. Micah seems to be increasingly persuasive on Dutch, and that's what leads to Dutch's downfall. Micah is pretty much the catalyst of the gang's downfall, you learn at the end. You also learn that Micah was the rat behind everything. Micah ratted out the boat robbery at the very beginning. Micah ratted out a bunch of the operations that happened in the middle because the government, the agency called the Pinkertons, were paying him to rat out Dutch and the gang. But Dutch doesn't believe that when Arthur tells him. So that's what this game is, Arthur realizing what he's really been doing all these years. He knows he's been bad. He knows he hasn't been the best guy in the world. But the end is him using his one last chance to do something good. He helps John Marston and his wife and his son Jack escape. He uses his life. Arthur dies either of tuberculosis or he gets shot in the head by Micah, depending on how you play the game. There's two different endings. But yeah, Arthur not only risks his life, but gives his life so that John, Abigail, and Jack can have a new life as a family. And that's the beauty of the story at the end. The last shot of the main game is the shot you saw in the intro of this video. Arthur laying down as tuberculosis is killing him and destroying his lungs, watching one last sunrise, sorry. And that was a big theme with Arthur throughout the whole game. There's always cutscenes and shots of him watching the sunrise. So it's hinted at that that's one of his favorite things to do, is just sit and watch the sunrise. So as you saw in the intro of this video, he does that one last time as the last bits of breath fade out of him. It's beautiful. This game is beautiful. Visually, it's great. Story, easily the best story I've ever played in a game, and it's so much fun to play. The mechanics, it's easy to play. It's not hard to the point where it's annoying and I want to turn it off, but it's hard enough to the point where I don't get bored just running through waves of dudes shooting them. The story of this game is truly amazing. And the end song, I think it'll be in the intro, Crash of Worlds, how the main part that repeats over and over again in the intro actually is, "May I stand unshaken amidst the crash of worlds." And watching Arthur die as that song plays, that really hit me different the first time I played through it. Because I was thinking about it, and I thought about why are they only repeating that part of the song? Because that part of the song, they only say it once, and then they move on to the next verse. Why are they repeating it so much? And then I thought about it is, that's what Arthur was trying to do at first. He knew that the old outlaw world with Dutch and the gang and outlaws and robbing, that world was crashing into the world of the new civilization, of towns and industrialization popping up all over the country, of law and order and fancy high lifestyle was moving across from east to west. And he knew that those two worlds coming together can't mean anything good at all. But he just wanted to survive. He didn't want to choose a side. He didn't want to be a morally bad man. He didn't want to be someone who just killed innocent people for the fun of it or for money. He didn't want to go be a part of society. That wasn't his thing. He wasn't comfortable like that. He didn't want to be a part of society. He didn't want to be all fancy and high life and all that. All he wanted to do was just stay put, stand unshaken amidst the two worlds crashing. And as that line repeats over and over again as Arthur's dying and the sun is rising, it really shows you he tried. But no one's unaffected when something like that happens. Arthur tried and he did all he could to stay neutral towards the end of the game, he's always telling everyone before every mission, look, this isn't my business. I don't want to get involved in something that isn't my business. I don't want to do something I don't have to do. I don't want to be put in a position that I don't have to be in if it means people are going to get hurt because of me. But he keeps doing it anyway. He keeps helping the people that have been loyal to him and the people who he trusts. Specifically towards the end of the game, Charles, who is someone who wasn't real big in the beginning of the game, but he got bigger towards the end because he was good friends with the chief of the Indian tribe. He helped the Indian tribe a lot. Arthur helped the Indian tribe a lot. And then Sadie Adler, who you rescue in the very beginning of the game after the O'Driscolls kill her husband and burn her house down. Or Micah burns her house down, but not on purpose. Because Micah's trying to rape her or something, I don't know. He's a terrible person. And then she slowly becomes a gunslinger throughout the whole game, and then towards the end, you help her a lot too. And I just played this mission last night towards the end of the game where Sadie says, Arthur, you're the last man here I trust. And since my husband died, you're the best man I know. So please help me with this one last mission, with this one last thing. And Arthur makes her promise. He says, okay, I'll do this one thing for you if you promise me that you'll help Jack, Abigail, and John escape when this goes down. Because Arthur knows the gang is falling apart. People are leaving left and right. They're getting out of Dutch's path because they know Dutch is just going to drag them into hell firsthand pretty much. So they're trying their best to just get out. Some people up and leave. Some people, like the priest of the group, Reverend Swanson, the Reverend, he just walks to the train station and leaves. Like some people in this gang just up and leave. The people who aren't dead, they just leave. And it's really hard to watch because Arthur catches all of them right before they leave, and he has these conversations with them. And you can see Arthur slowly turning to the realization that this can't go on. But Arthur's dying of tuberculosis. He knows he has to get somewhere where it's warm and dry. He has to get to the far west coast. He has to get to California where it's warm and dry so tuberculosis can't destroy him and he might survive. But they're stuck in what I believe would be like Louisiana or Kansas or Georgia or something in that southern area, maybe a little bit north. A little bit north, not like Ohio, like a state or two north, where it's not very warm. Well, it's kind of warm, but it's definitely not dry at all. So tuberculosis is slowly taking over Arthur's body, but he can't bring himself to leave until he knows that John will be safe. And he feels like it's his duty to watch this gang go down in a blaze of glory, because that's what he knows is going to happen. And that's what does happen. They, with the Indian tribe, attack an oil facility. And the army fights back, obviously. And Dutch and Arthur are in a room together. And Arthur gets tackled by a soldier. And Dutch is right behind the soldier. He can shoot the soldier in the head. But instead he just leaves. He leaves Arthur there. Arthur, who is built and shown to you to be the most loyal man in the gang, the man who has stuck with Dutch through everything. Dutch rescued Arthur when he was a teenager and taught him everything he knows. He's basically a father to Arthur. And he leaves him. Luckily, the Indian prince that I talked about earlier comes in and saves Arthur, but he gets shot in the process. So, the Indian prince dies in the arms of his father, a father who never wanted him to go to war in the first place, because Dutch backed out on Arthur. And that's when Arthur he doesn't care about Dutch anymore. Then he starts to realize that all the other people that have died before is because Dutch wasn't careful enough, and Dutch kind of abandoned them. The first one that dies is Sean, someone you rescue at the beginning of the game because he got trapped during the Blackwater boat robbery. So you rescue him, you get him back for a few missions, and then as you're walking into that town with the two families feuding, he gets shot in the head. And Arthur, there's this cutscene towards the end of the game when Arthur's riding back towards camp, and it's the final mission. It's called Redemption, it's the final mission. And you see all these old cutscenes, and one of them is someone telling Dutch, you need to be careful with these two families. It's Hosea. It's Hosea telling Dutch, you need to watch out with these two families. They're going to catch on. They're starting to catch on now. We can't put lives in danger. But he keeps pushing anyway. Sean dies because of it. Jack gets kidnapped because of it. Later on, Kieran, someone you turned from the O'Driscolls to part of your gang, the O'Driscolls capture him when he was out on a ride alone when he shouldn't have been alone. He gets his head chopped off, and the O'Driscolls find the camp, the Dutch's camp. And it's kind of heartbreaking, like, playing the game a second time and seeing, because you move your outlaw camp, you move your gang camp every once in a while, and it's kind of heartbreaking to see, like, as you move, the gang gets smaller and smaller. People are dying, people are leaving, but you have to push on. And it's really, like, heartbreaking to see, like, from the first location of your camp to the last one, there's so many less tents and so many less wagons and so many less people walking around. And it's hard to see that in a story, but that's what makes a story so good, is it really makes you feel it in every aspect of the game. People get, because you can just walk up and talk to anyone in the game, anyone at all, and when you talk to people in the gang randomly, as the game progresses, they get progressively less enthusiastic, except for Micah. They get progressively more sad and slow, except for Micah, because this is what Micah wants. Micah's getting money from both sides, and he's getting influence on Dutch. Micah gets exactly what he wants. And in the final mission, Arthur rides up to camp. Oh, right before the final mission, they try to rob a train, and John falls off. John, who's been pretty much the second main character, or third outside of Dutch and obviously Arthur, John gets thrown off the train. And Arthur and Sadie Adler turn around and say, hey, we need to get him. We need to get John. Someone jump off and go help him. And Dutch just says, no, he's dead. Let's go. He's done. There's nothing we can do. Let's keep going. He's dead. And then that's when Arthur has enough. Arthur takes a break for like a day, just stays away from camp. And then the next day, he rides into camp as this song is playing. It's, what is that song called? Geez, That's the Way It Is. Look up That's the Way It Is, Red Dead Redemption 2. That song is playing as you're seeing cutscenes of, like, people dying, or decisions Arthur has made to bring him here. Because throughout the whole game, you can either be, like, an asshole or a good guy. And that morality meter depends on how the ending is. So depending on what you've done, it shows you, like, the good or bad decisions you made in this cutscene. It shows you how the gang has fallen in, like, a short little way as you ride up this trail to camp. And when you get there, Arthur gets off his horse and says, Dutch, we're done. This is over. Too many people have died. Too many people have gotten lost. This is done. And this is my favorite scene in the whole thing. And Dutch says, Arthur, have you lost every bit of faith you have left? And Arthur pulls out his pistol and says, you're damn right I have, because you've taken every bit from me. And Micah has, like, brought his friends into the gang too. And, Micah's brought his friends into the gang. So Dutch, Micah, and two of Micah's friends stand opposite Arthur with their guns out now. And then who else? Oh, Bill and Javier. They stay low to Dutch for whatever reason. So Arthur looks like he's outnumbered. It's just Arthur against all these other dudes, but he's standing strong. He's not going to shoot, or he might, but he doesn't want to. And then just as Mike is about to shoot him, John comes running out of the woods into camp, screaming, pulls out a shotgun and says, you goddamn son of a bitch, Dutch, you left me to die. You left me to die. Those dogs almost tore me apart. Dutch, you son of a bitch. Screaming with his shotgun aimed right at Dutch. And Dutch is like, my son, I'm so happy you're okay. My son. And John's had enough. Dutch has done this so many times. John got lost in the woods and torn apart by wolves in the beginning of the game. Dutch said the same thing. John got imprisoned. He got arrested during the bank robbery. And Dutch didn't break him out. Arthur and Sadie had to break him out. And he comes back into camp and said, son, I'm so glad you're safe, but I had a plan. And John's coming back and Dutch is saying now, John, I'm so happy you're safe, but I had a plan to come get you. But thank you, I'm happy you're safe. And John's done. He put the shotgun right to his head and says, no, there's no more plan, there's no more gang, this is over. And as everything's about to go down, the army ambushes the camp. That was weird. The army ambushes the camp. Bullets fly everywhere. The other five who weren't John and Arthur, Dutch, Micah, and Micah's friends, and Bill and Javier, they leave. They get on horses and they get out, leaving John and Arthur to defend themselves against the army, which they can't because it's an army squadron of soldiers, and it's two guys, one of them severely injured, one of them dying of tuberculosis. They can't do that much. So they throw off some shots, kill soldiers, get on their horses, and get the hell out. And once they get to this forest where they're kind of alone, but they're still on their tail, John looks at Arthur and says, Arthur, Abigail found the money in the cave back at the old camp. Get the money. Go get the money. We can start a new life. And Arthur says, no, I'm not leaving you alone. I'm making sure you get to your family. So they keep riding through the woods, and then Arthur's horse gets shot. And John's horse gets scared off, I think. The horse dying is another extremely emotional moment. I've never cried once in a video game before this. I teared up twice playing this game, when the horse died and then when Arthur died. So your horse gets shot, your horse goes down, straight up. And Arthur, while still being shot at, and John barely being able to cover him, Arthur goes on, puts his hand on the horse's head, and just says, it's okay, and just calms it down until he sees the life fade from its eyes. Seeing that, because the horse in this game, like, you straight up bond with this horse. Like, you have to take care of it, you have to brush it, you gotta clean it, you gotta feed it. Like, it's a straight up bond you have with this horse, and it gets you out of situations. It helps you a lot. So seeing that, and seeing Arthur care about it, that hits. And then the two of them go on foot. And Arthur can't run. It's raining, the middle of the night, it's cold and wet. He can barely breathe in the first place. So he can't run very far, let alone up a mountain. So as they're running, Arthur says, John, I can't push no more. But you gotta go. You gotta run up this mountain. I'll hold them off as far as you can. Get to your family. Get the hell out of here. And this is another one of the most emotional moments. Arthur takes off his gun belt and his bandolier, and gives it to John. He takes off his hat, which has been another big element in this game. Before pretty much every big mission, you see Arthur sitting down, put his hat on, and get up and leave. Arthur takes off his hat, put it on John's head, puts his hand on his shoulder, and says, John, you need to go be a man and be with your family. And sends him off. And the last thing they say to each other, John looks at Arthur and says, you know you're my brother, right? Arthur turns back and says, I know. Never see each other again. John runs off to be with his family. Arthur shoots down some of the soldiers, but Micah comes out of nowhere, tackles him, beats the shit out of him. Arthur's crawling towards a gun to try and shoot Micah. Dutch comes in, steps on the gun, takes the gun and leaves. He doesn't shoot Micah, he doesn't shoot Arthur, he doesn't talk to either of them. He leaves. And Micah doesn't have the heart to kill Arthur even then. He sees a dying, sick man, a man who has halted his progress with Dutch, a man who has never agreed with him, a man who Arthur has blamed Dutch for everything that has happened. Or Arthur has blamed Micah for everything that has happened, and rightfully so. Everything is Micah's fault. And Micah just leaves, so Arthur can see that sunset that you saw in the intro of this video. I know I basically just summarized the story, but the characters, and every character has like their own diverse and in-depth development. And the story of this game in total is beautiful. It really is. It's a man trying to make his way at first. There's a saying in the game, feed those who need to be fed, save those who need to be saved, and shoot those who need to be shot. That's what he's trying to do. That's what Arthur's trying to do throughout most of the game. But as it goes on, he can't do that because the gang isn't doing that. The gang is shooting people who don't need to be shot. The gang is shooting innocent people. The gang is inciting violence that doesn't need to happen. And that's a really good theme and message to have in a game, is you can't, if someone is inciting violence for the sake of violence, it's just going to lead to chaos. You can't do that. You can't have that. You can't have violence for violence's sake. You can't have violence just for a distraction. And that's a great theme in this game. That and family, and letting go of your family when you need to. Because Dutch, Hosea, Bill, Javier, everyone in the gang is Arthur's family. Arthur didn't have a real family. This is his family. But realizing you have to let go eventually. You have to let go of your family. You have to do the right thing. And that's what he did. He helped John, who had a real family. He helped John get away and raise his family. he did the right thing with his dying breath. That's what makes this game, in my opinion, the best story in a video game ever. Or at least in anything I've played or heard of. My favorite game ever. I've played it completely twice. I'm almost about to finish it a third time. And I have another save file where I'm halfway through. This is my favorite game of all time. Hopefully I explained good enough why. Holy shit, this clip alone is 20 minutes. I have like 15 or 20 other minutes. This is going to be another 40-minute video. Jesus, anyway. Yeah, thank you for watching. I don't think I'm going to make an outro. So yeah, see ya.